Hey guys, I know I've been away for a little bit, but I am back, and in a big bad way. And I bring gifts.
Gift? What gift?
Yes, that's right. I've been cranking away this past couple weeks on something special. And for a limited time, I'm actually going to give it to you for free. But first, what is this wonderful thing I've made that I'm giving away?
Unfortunately, no one can be told what...
No. I'm just going to tell you what it is. As you probably already know, Black Mirror Season 7 recently came out, and I loved it.
Yeah.
It's great.
So good all around, except for one episode in particular. Can you guess which one it was? But yeah, I'm a big fan of the show, and whether you're a big fan of the show or not, I've got a special treat for you today. You see, inspired by how great Season 7 was, I decided to put my animation skills to the test and recreate the opening titles in After Effects. But to create something exactly as has already been done, well, that's a bit boring to me. So I wanted to push things further. So I juiced up my version and created something new altogether, although still humming along with that sort of Black Mirror cadence. But thing is, I didn't just make a one-off static animation, I created a motion graphic template, or MOGRT. MOGRT, where you can not only edit the text to be whatever you want them to be, but you can totally stylize it in a number of ways to truly make it your own, whether you're making a dystopian parody or whatever video project you're conspiring to produce. I call this MOGRT Dystopian Vibe, and it is my gift to you for a limited time. All you have to do is sign up on my free Massive Creativity Substack, and then it's yours. Now, depending on when you're seeing this video, it may be too late for this offer, but fear not, you can still get it at its normal price of $10 on my website at jkaslo.com. Or, and this is something that is brand new that I'm excited to share with you guys today, I have set up a Massive Creativity membership on Fourth Wall, where if you become a member, you're going to get access to my Dystopian Vibe MOGRT and all the various digital downloads I've made thus far and will be making in the months to come in 2025 and beyond. I'll fill you in with more details on the membership later in this video, but first, let's get into the heart of today's video, which is the Dystopian Vibe MOGRT. Before I walk you through installation and setup and all the many ways you can customize this bad boy to your own liking, first let's see it in action.
Installation and setup.
Okay, first things first, you gotta get it. I've included a couple links in the description of this video as well as in a pinned comment down below. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm offering it for free to my Substack subscribers, so if you're watching this early enough in May, visit jkaslo.substack.com and enter your email address to join the mailing list. Once you're officially on the list, you'll then have access to the Substack post where I reveal the promo code to go get the Dystopian Vibe MOGRT for free on my website. By the way, in case you're watching this after the promo has ended, even though it won't be free anymore, you can still use the promo code included in your Substack welcome email for 10% off your order. That is an ongoing perk for all my free tier Substack subscribers. So yeah, click on the link in the Substack post to head over to the Dystopian Vibe product page on my website. Add it to cart and head to checkout. Apply your promo code and place your order. Then simply download the zip file and unzip it onto your computer. Cool thing is, this MOGRT is OS neutral, so whether you're running Windows or you're a Mac user like me, either way, it'll work for you, as long as you're using an up-to-date version of Adobe Premiere. Speaking of Adobe Premiere, let's fire it up. Okay, here we go. We are in Premiere. I'm not going to spend too much time explaining how MOGRTs work in general. I'm just gonna fly through really quick. The key thing is you have this graphics templates panel. And if you don't see that in your Premiere anywhere, just go up to Window and make sure this graphics templates is checked. You're going to need this to track down the actual MOGRT, and you're going to need the properties panel, which once you select the MOGRT, it's going to display all of the properties here that we're going to tweak to customize the MOGRT to your liking. before we get to the properties, let's go ahead and focus on the graphics templates panel here. I have lots of MOGRTs I've made. I have lots of MOGRTs I use. I've organized them in all these different folders. So I've placed the Dystopian Vibe MOGRT in this folder on my hard drive. You're just going to click this plus, go find that folder on your hard drive, then it'll show up here, and just make sure it's checked. And any MOGRTs that appear in that folder are going to show up in this list down here below. So I have 3 MOGRTs. These are my other 2 MOGRTs, the Chapters Pro MOGRT, which I made a separate tutorial on that. That's really all you need to know in terms of accessing the Dystopian Vibe MOGRT or any other MOGRTs you have installed. So that's a quick crash course in setting up and using MOGRTs in general. So anyway, all you got to do is take this MOGRT, click and drag it down into your timeline. What I'm going to do now is walk you through the controls and show you everything that you can change and customize and all the good stuff. So let's first click on the MOGRT. So I click here, and then all of a sudden you see in the properties, all of this stuff here populates. And because I've made so many things in here that you can tweak, what I'm going to do is take this properties panel, drag it over here to the side. And by the way, you can do this with any panels, just in case you didn't know. So the key thing is we just want to make this window nice and big because we're going to preview what we're working on. And we're going to tweak all these settings here in the properties panel. And this is our timeline here down below. So if we go back to the beginning of the MOGRT, by default, it just says J. Kaslo Presents. All you have to do is in this text field, just say whatever you want, Wetflix Presents, and then click outside of that anywhere, and it updates. And if you don't want all caps, notice how I didn't type it all caps here. You can just uncheck this TT. By default, I make it all caps, but if you just tap that off, it'll make it regular case. So this can literally be whatever you want. John Doe Presents. By the way, the font that we're using that you're going to need to have installed is Proxima Nova Bold. The other font that you're going to need, in addition to Proxima Nova Bold, is called Major Mono Display. Both of these fonts are part of Adobe Fonts, so you shouldn't have any problems getting it. If you're using Premiere, then you obviously have an Adobe account, so you have access to Adobe Fonts. And by the way, if you ever want to reset this thing back to its default state, what you do is go over here to Effect Controls, select this graphic parameters, and then hit this little back arrow button to reset the effect. Once you do that, whatever changes you've made, it'll revert it back to the default state. So that's another FYI for you. So we're back to the default state. You've got your title, the default is Dystopian Vibe. If you notice, if you go frame by frame, it pulls the letters from whatever you type in as your main text. That's what's really cool about this thing is the animation. It's dynamic. So this animation will change based on whatever you type in here for your main title. If I scrub forward a little bit, notice as we get closer to the title resolve, you're seeing the T, you're seeing an I and the T and the O and the P and the N and the A and the V. So that's what's cool. Like it's assembling this dynamically based on what title you type in here. So for example, if I change this to Doom Scroll, notice how the letters changed. Went to R, we've got an O in there. And just to show you the flexibility of this thing, because it can work with short titles, with long titles. Let's go with Matsumura Fishworks. In case you didn't know, that was from The Simpsons.
Matsumura Fishworks and Tamarabushi Heavy Manufacturing Concern.
Mr. Sparkle episode. So you see our title dynamically changes. So you have even more letters here that are animating as it forms. So the more letters that your title is, the more that it has to pull from in this formational phase of the animation. So if you have a shorter title, those slots for those extra letters will just be blank. The next thing, the colors. So by default, there's this slight off-white multiply applied to basically to everything. And by default, I have it at 50% of this tan color, just to show you the effect. If I up it to 100% on the slider, notice how it becomes less of a pure white and more of this tan color. If I reduce the opacity of the color mult down to 0, it's more like a very pure white. And also by default, related to this is a color tint. This is more subtle, but by default, it's this bluish tint. You can up that to 100, or you can reduce it down to 0. So now we really have a pure white. So again, you can adjust the intensity of these, and you can choose the actual color that you want to use. So just to give you a quick sense, I'll increase the multiply to 100. I'll reduce the tint altogether. So now we just have this pure tan color. But I'm going to change it. Let's change it to this orange color. So now all of a sudden, it's a much different look than the default. And this doesn't just apply to the title. This applies to everything. If I scrub back, notice everything is this rich orange color. So if I want to change this to like a hot pink, again, there you go. Everything's a hot pink. And then you can mix it up. So you can have this hot pink with this slight bluish tint, and you're going to see the tints a little bit more around the edges, so as it's slightly blurred. So if you get rid of all the blur, which I'm going to get to in a second, you really won't notice the tint as much. But notice if I lower the multiply, you start to notice a little bit more of the tint kind of around the edges with the glow. Okay. One more thing here before we move on to the customizations galore section here. Just under the color options, I include an option to invert the whole thing. By default, it's always going to be a light colored text on a black background. But if you want to just flip everything on its head, notice, see, if you just tap this invert button, now we have dark text over a light background. So as I scrub forward here, so you really get this nice cool look here. Very different. Something like this you tend to think of as sort of white on dark, but you can get all kinds of different effects. You can change the color to, let's go with this blue or something. It's a little washed out now, but if I increase the intensity of the multiply, then you get something more like this. And I haven't even gotten into the advanced options, but already you're starting to see all that you can do to customize this thing. Let's go back here to graphic parameters. Let's reset the whole thing. We're back to the default text, dystopian vibe. So those are the most basic settings. And one thing I do recommend is, even though you can change whether you want all caps or not on the intro text over here, if you uncheck that, what I recommend you do is when you're typing in your main title, make sure you type in your title in all caps. Because if you type this in lowercase, this is all well and good here. Everything is matching all caps. But notice as I scrub through here a little bit, the lowercase version of this font is different than the uppercase version. I like the look of this uppercase version of it. It's very cryptic. It has more of this sort of glitchy, matrixy feel. So just warning you in advance, if you're wondering why your stuff is not looking the way this all looks, that's because you're using the lowercase version of the title when you typed it in. So notice how the font looks all over here. Notice when I change this to all caps, see, now everything looks more appropriately how it should. Again, just a little FYI note, make sure when you're typing in your title for optimal results, type in your title as all caps. Okay, we've covered everything there is to know about the text input and all the color options. So I'm just going to minimize this for now. And let's get into the really fun part, what I call this little group here of customizations galore. All right, so here's where you can really truly go nuts. So by default, I have the blur turned on at 100%, and there's a subtle glow turned on at 100%, and there's more of this hardcore glow. By default, it's at 50%. And this vertical blurs, it only affects the title. So it has nothing to do with the beginning portion, just FYI. So let's go to the title here so you can see what I mean. You see how it's kind of jiggling and vibrating each character uniquely. So here's an example of a frame where there's a lot more of the random vertical blur. So if I increase the vertical blur to 100 here, notice how it's much more prominent. If you don't like that, you can just drag this all the way to 0, and you're no longer going to have any of that vertical blur. You see, you still get the jiggle, but there's no vertical blur. So again, there's no right or wrong. It's really just a matter of how you want it, what you like, what you're going for, what kind of look. And I'm letting you get super granular here in terms of tweaking every little thing you want to, pretty much. So I've addressed the vertical blur here. If you up the hardcore glow, it's got this really gritty, you really get this nice kind of frenetic, high energy vibe, But on the flip side, if I reduce the vertical blurs to 0, if I turn off the hardcore glow, bring that to 0, reduce the subtle glow to 0, and reduce the blur to 0, notice it is 100% perfectly crisp. No blur, no nothing. It's just sharp edges, clean text. And that goes not just for the title, but for all these shapes as well. So if I view it at 100%, you can kind of see it's just perfectly clean, no blur, really sharp edges through and through. Okay, so now I have this option here for turbulence. And if you go full 100%, you'll notice it the most. You already see, if I view here 100%, you see, it gets this sort of very frenetic, turbulent state. So it can be really cool for a dystopian vibe in general. I mean, when you start mixing in the blurs and the shakes and the sort of warping, the turbulence, it's really cool, the mix of effects and how it all plays together. So that's the turbulence. And now we get into some really fun stuff here that really starts to distinguish this MOGRT. The next setting, and by default, I have pixel bits and glitch turned off. So notice what happens if I drag pixel bits to 100%. Okay, so we scrub through a little bit. See, now we start getting these little bits of digital glitch and pixels mixing in there. And by the way, once the logo resolves, you don't see any more of the pixel bits. The pixel bits happen in this range here. See all these little dots and little glitching happening here. So all of that stuff happens in here. So let me go back to like this frame. If I turn pixel bits off, that's literally what we're left with. If I turn pixel bits on, you get all this. And it's a slider. So if you only want the pixel bits to be kind of subtle, you can reduce the opacity there to maybe like 25, 30% or whatever like that. So then it's just kind of this more subtle pixely texture in the backdrop. You know, so I'm going to bump it up to 100% opacity because then now I'm going to throw in some glitch. And just so you get the full effect, I'm going to glitch it at 100%. So now you start getting these really interesting color blends of this glitch, you know, and it's sort of mishmashing with the pixel bits and the text elements and everything all together. And you get these little color variations, you know. I know under the color options, we can choose the one color and stuff, but if you want to start getting little color abnormalities, you turn that glitch on and maximize it to 100. And then you start getting all of this. See here? See this? Some red, some purple, some green. That's all the glitch. So again, when you combine it with the turbulence, and especially in this middle portion here, with the glitch and the pixel bits, like you really get some cool. And check this out. So instead of that tan color, like let's go back to this orange color and let's increase, not quite 100%, but let's do it like that. Yeah. See? So now you really start getting some cool like color mixes here, with the glitch turned on and the pixel bits and the color multiply, so it's not just white. Really cool stuff. Really cool stuff. Cool. All right. So those are the main customizations. Now this is where I have this folder here, and this is sort of for more advanced users, but I'm going to walk you through it. Again, it's a lot of trial and error. You got to be careful with it because you can kind of uglify it if you don't do it right. So notice with the intensity at 0, if I turn the intensity on, now the reason why you're not going to notice that much difference is because you have the different RGB channels. So you have red, you have green, and you have blue. And by default, the location, this is basically the red values of everything underneath this adjustment layer. Not to get too confusing for people who don't know what I'm talking about, but just trust me, just think of it as like the red values, the green values, and the blue values. And those combined just form what you see normally. But if you start to shift the position of the red values a little bit over to the left or right, or it's likewise with the green and the blue, then you start to notice some things. My advice is don't really mess with the Y values. You could if you want, but for optimal results, I recommend you just tweak the X values. So notice if I increase the X value, it's sort of creating a copy, but what it's doing is it's just moving the red channel off to the side, you see? So now you start to get that glitch feeling throughout. So again, it just leads to more of this erratic, chaotic feel, you know? That is just tweaking the red value intensity. And see, you can adjust the effect intensity of the red. Now, as I was kind of tweaking things, my advice would be you have the red channel, the green channel, the blue channel. And if you start lowering these values, you're gonna kind of get this fog, which you don't really want to get the fog. I recommend increasing the intensity of 2 of the channels. It doesn't matter which 2. So again, it's gonna be a lot of trial and error. If you're running into that fog, just keep tweaking the settings. You can also lower the intensity of the entire effect like that. So you're getting this really multi-layered, glitchy, trippy vibe. And let me play it through here just so you can kind of get a sense. All right. Looks good. There you go. With the yellow and the green and the red, it almost kind of has this Jamaican cross colors feel. But again, the possibilities are infinite, you know? Like instead of this orange color, you can make it like this bright teal color. And then you get something like this immediately. So again, I'm just showing you how this works, all the controls you can adjust, and it's up to you to play around with it and take it in crazy directions. And again, post your videos on social media, tag me. I'm Jay Kaslo on Twitter, Instagram, everywhere. Post your stuff, send me a link. I'd love to see how you're using this in your digital creations. So before I wrap up all these settings here, if you expand this folder called the end, you have a couple settings, obviously, that only affect the endings. Let's go back to the default. So I'm going to reset all of this by clicking that. The end sequence basically refers to once the title resolves and what happens here at this point. You know, in Black Mirror, it's the glass crack, and we'll get to that in a second because that is an option for you if you want to go with that. You know, I had to throw that in there. But the unique style that I threw in there, I call it this cascade. So it's a little matrixy, it's glitchy, dystopian. So instead of the glass crack, we have this dramatic moment here. If you notice, there's these little color fluctuations here at the end. And that's because, see the green there and all this stuff. So that's because the glitch, and by default, it's at 50%. If you bring it up to 100%, it's even more prominent. So I love the glitch here at the end for this portion. It also gives you these different color blends and all this stuff, right? You get these little strips that are affecting the main title and stuff in the background. But if you turn the glitch off completely, then you're just back on your default color state, right? So if I change this just to red, and if I increase the multiply, like, then this is what you get. It's all red. I'm going to hit Command Z, go back to our default. So that is the glitch for the end. By default, the cascade opacity is 100%. You could turn it off by dragging this all the way to 0, and then you're just left with the title. But I love how it starts out, all the layers say dystopian vibe, which again, this is all dynamic. So if you change the title to Doom Scroll, notice not just does it change the main title, but it changes the text in the back. And it doesn't stay as Doom Scroll, because as you scrub through, it starts as Doom Scroll, but then it kind of starts to glitch out each layer. So you end up with this pattern. It's just cool how the whole animation dynamically changes depending on what you put in for your title. And again, make that all caps. That's your cascade settings, but I got a little Easter egg for you here. If you really wanted to just take this in a Black Mirror parody direction, I would recommend you turn off the glitch, turn off the cascade, turn on the crack. I've got this glass background in here as well. So now, obviously, your title, and there you go. What does that look like? So if you want to do a parody, you know, this MOGRT is definitely capable of getting you there. And I've even created an alternate sound mix, so it has a crack sound in there. All you would need to do is mute the default sound and drag in the audio file that I supply you in the zip file, sort of an Easter egg. You drag that audio file here into a different layer, and all of a sudden you get the crack sound. And again, the cool thing is that crack and all this, it'll work with whatever phrase you type in, right? So dystopian vibe works, something short, like bite me, that works, something long, like Matsumura, fish work, that works. So it's highly flexible, totally customizable, and there you have it, folks. That is pretty much all the options. Now, I am going to run through a couple examples here really quick. I know I've gotten kind of long with this tutorial, but I really just wanted to showcase how powerful this thing is and all that you can do with it. So let's head over to the second demo. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag in an image in the background. And I also want to show you how the invert can come into play as well. So if you notice, this is all just a solid black background or the glass texture in the back. So, but what I want to show you is you can layer this MOGRT over footage and it can work really nicely. So in this example, I'm just going to use the still frame that I generated in Midjourney. So I'm going to drag this image into the layer 1 here. I'm going to extend it to the full length of the timeline. Now notice you don't see anything because the MOGRT itself is 100% opaque. But notice if I go to effect controls and the opacity, the blend mode for the MOGRT, you can change it to screen. And notice now anything that's white or bright will show up and sort of layer on to your layer underneath, right? Your base layer. I'm going to go ahead and scale this to fit. Let's say we like this black on red for everything and we want the title to also be black on red. Well, easy peasy. Let's just select the MOGRT. The key thing is do an invert. The problem with this is, remember, anything that's a bright value is going to show through on top of the layer underneath. But we don't want all of this. We want this to be black, right? So we did the invert, but let's just change this to white to get rid of that tan. But now the problem is our layer mode. We don't want a screen. We want only the dark portions to come through. So just go back over here to effect controls, and instead of screen, I'm going to change that to multiply. See, now only the dark values are coming through. And let's say we want to make it gritty, so we'll increase this hardcore blur. So there you go. It's kind of a nice look, right? By default, the title is always centered in the canvas, but let's say because we have this guy here, we want to move it up a little bit. Right. Now, I don't have position settings directly in the MOGRT included, but if you scroll down here in the properties panel, you can easily access the transforms here. So all you got to do is take the position here and change that Y value, and then you can place it anywhere you want, like let's say right there. Right. And not only that, same thing, you can adjust the scale. So this will scale the whole thing. If you want it larger, you get something like that. You know, that's pretty good. Let's lower it a little bit. And again, you go back earlier, you get all this cool animation happening. And this is with just the pixel bits and all that stuff turned off. So if I bring the glitch back on to make it more erratic, if I bring the pixel bits on, then you start to get even more of this like cool like other stuff. See all this stuff here? And again, you can get into the RGB split and do all that. Like everything that I showed you before, you can also tweak it here, but now it's interacting as a layer above your footage. So then if you want all of this code, the encryption happening over it, then great, go with that. But maybe you just want the title, no problem. Just expand in the Cascade folder here, reduce the opacity to 0, and there's just your title. Just wanted to show you that, so how you can layer things over some background footage. So one more thing here, similar to what we just did, but I want to give just another quick example. So I have this image here of Sarah Connor from Terminator, right? This is one of my Midjourney images. I already set the layer mode. That's why this is showing up to linear dodge. So, which is like add in After Effects. So you can set it to screen, or you could set it to linear dodge. Linear dodge is going to be a little bit sort of brighter and more dramatic. Screen will be a little bit more plain and straightforward. But if you want to take the footage, not the MOGRT, the footage underneath, first select the footage. Let's scoot her over a bit, like over here. We can increase the scale a little bit. Yeah, I don't know, say something like that. Now, let's say instead of this being a main title, you type in Sarah Connor in all caps, and we're going to go down here to change the position a little bit, you know. So you can see now how you can use this as a cool ass lower third or character intro. It doesn't have to be the main title, you know, and you get all these cool little pixel bits. And if you have your own soundtrack, just click here to mute the audio, and you don't even have to use it with the intro. You don't even have to use it with the circle. You could start it at whatever point. So maybe you just want to start your titles right around here. Insert an edit here, and you can delete the first part. Our animation is starting from here, you see? And let's go ahead and shrink it down a little bit. Move it back up a little bit. So something like that. Yeah. And let's say we want to increase the turbulence. If you go back earlier here, let's bring in some more of this intensity and definitely bring in some of that glitch. And if we don't want it to be as white, maybe we want it to be, yeah, something like that. Yeah. And then if you don't want to have all these bits, go to the end here and go to the cascade and reduce that to 0. And there you go. So just like that, you can use this as like character intro, you know, or opening titles, including the names of your characters, whatever, right? That's like instant high-end opening film titles for a techie dystopian or suspense action movie, whatever you want. Just there you go. There you go. So you start to see like the range of what this thing can do, you know, real quick, like just so you can get an idea of how it really can start to feel like if we throw in some footage here, this couple, let's go back to the beginning. Let's call this Broken Dreams, and let's turn the crack on. And we'll have a little bit of glass, but it's going to be subtle. Make sure I'll just turn the cascade off just to be safe. Yeah, we'll turn on a little bit of the pixel bits, a little bit of the turbulence, reduce the blur titles, increase the hardcore glow, scrub forward a little bit. Okay, just for kicks, I muted the default audio and I dragged in the audio with the crack sounds. All right, let me run that through real quick and you can check it out. All right, there you go. A comprehensive walkthrough of my new Dystopian Vibe MOGRT. Take it, run with it, and tag me on social media when you post your videos. I'd love to see how you're using it.
Then show me what you got, what you gonna do.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, not only is this video a demo and tutorial of the Dystopian Vibe MOGRT, but it's also kicking off my new Massive Creativity membership. I may make a dedicated video with a more official announcement later, but for now, let me run you through the basics of how I've set things up and what exactly you get by becoming a member. I've set up a couple pretty much identical membership tiers on both Substack and Fourth Wall. I'll be maintaining both platforms equally, which yes, is more work for me to manage both, but I really wanted to make things as easy for you as possible. So if you're already a Substack user, well, it's super easy to just upgrade to a paid tier. I'm going to be offering a plethora of digital downloads ranging from a super advanced template like today's Dystopian Vibe MOGRT to various assets like wallpapers, textures, icon packs, and fonts. All right, here's how the membership tiers break down. There are 3 options: free, basic, and
the aptly named Gold member.
If you just want to follow along casually, you can join the free tier over on Substack. You'll get 10% off all purchases at jkaslo.com, occasional member discounts, like the free promo I'm offering right now for the Dystopian Vibe MOGRT, and access to some member-only posts. But things start getting juicier when you become a full-fledged member. Basic membership is just $5 a month, and you can sign up through either Substack or Fourth Wall. That gets you $5 off your first purchase, 15% off everything after that, even bigger discounts on new product drops, early access to all Massive Creativity podcast episodes, and access to member-only posts. Now, for the best possible experience and value, become a gold member. And here's where things differ a bit, depending on which platform you sign up on. On Fourth Wall, gold membership is $10 a month, but on Substack, the gold member tier, also known as a founding member, is only offered as an annual plan at $120 a year. So basically, if you're on a tight budget, I recommend going with Fourth Wall. But if you're all in and want to support me in building out even more tools, content, and creative resources, I'd love to welcome you as a founding member on Substack. Either way, as a gold member, you'll get $10 off your first purchase, 20% off everything after that, the biggest exclusive discounts on new product drops, and full access to all member-only posts. More perks are coming too, like live streams, direct messaging with me, one-on-one video calls, and more. So if you've been enjoying my work and want to support my efforts and get cool stuff along the way, there's a tier for you, and choose whichever platform you prefer. My passion is creativity, and I'm a huge fan of productivity in general because as I see it, if we can be more productive and move more efficiently, it can totally empower us to become more creative, which at the end of the day, that's where the real joy is. As I've said before and will say time and time again, to survive is human, to create is divine. All that being said, I hope you enjoy the Dystopian Vibe MOGRT. Again, tag me on social media to show me how you've used it. I'd love to see. And yeah, if you'd like me to keep releasing more free products in the future, like the Dystopian Vibe MOGRT, well, be sure to click the like button down below and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Oh, and share this video with somebody who you think would enjoy the MOGRT as well. Spread the love. I look forward to welcoming you as a new Massive Creativity member. This is all, of course, very new, but I'm super excited to have you on board as we grow this thing together. It's just going to get better and better and better. All right, that's all for now. I'll see you in the next video.
What to watch next?